must have been about 40 or so years ago that something happened in the world that would change people's lives. It was the arrival into our local shops of a small box-like item, very square and very colourful. And people at that time, especially the young people of the world, would get caught up in this craze that had then swept the world. The item about which I speak was the Rubik's Cube, and its arrival started a craze across the world. Everywhere you looked, people were playing with this very simple device that created an instant stir, as so many endeavoured to organise the colours into their rightful places. It was indeed a great gadget for its time, and those who brought into the game, they would be somewhat preoccupied by the wonder of it in that moment. Now, while it may have been a wonderful distraction from everything else that was taking place in the world, because the players would then focus their whole being on this small box, and this perhaps was the problem. This little cube occupied the lives of so many people and so distracted them from all of those things that may have been going on around them as they focused completely on playing with the Rubik's Cube. It may have been the same way back in the days of Jesus as he walked the earth, because it was back then that the religious leaders presented Jesus with a possible problem, a problem that perhaps needed an attention. The problem was that woman. She'd married 7 brothers, and all had died. To whom then would she be wife in God's kingdom? It may have been an issue that would be discussed by philosophers and theologians at that time, and the conversation would simply go round and round without necessarily finding a solution. But it was a question that focused the attention of those philosophers and theologians, whose lives would then be somewhat preoccupied by this focus point. Like the Rubik's Cube devotees, these religious people may also have missed the unfolding events that surrounded them because they were so caught up in the issue around which they were grappling. It was the question that they had also presented to Jesus at that time. First of all, I think, to test him, but also to somehow draw him into their own world, where they focused almost entirely on that one question, that one issue that occupied their time. But Jesus was a little different from these religious leaders, who seemed to be caught up in the challenge of that one question, rather than being aware of all that surrounded them. Jesus was not going to get caught in their philosophical merry-go-round and so get immersed in this unanswerable question. He chose another path. Instead, Jesus endeavoured to draw these religious into the world beyond their merely philosophical posturing upon an impossible question. Jesus was so different because he lived in the world, and he lived in a world that surrounded him. It was here in the lives of the people he met, the challenges that confronted him, and those moments of encounter with God that were at the very heart of his life. This was his experience. This was his life. And it was here in the midst of the ordinary and the everyday that he would find his purpose in his life. It may have been this experience that Jesus had set out to share, not only with the religious leaders who had come to him with their unanswerable question, but also with any and all people who came to him to hear that message of God's love active in the world. It was in the here and now that Jesus lived and worked and acted. It was in the here and now that he would bring that presence of God and the kingdom of God to life for all who came seeking something beyond themselves. Today, the Rubik's Cube is pretty much a thing of the past, as our world seems to have moved beyond the wonder of that small, colourful gadget. It is very rare to see anyone today with a Rubik's Cube. But I think the world still has not changed that much, as people now seem to have replaced that cube with their iPad, iPod, iPhone, or even a laptop. And still, people get lost in their own world as they immerse themselves in these new, colourful gadgets without much awareness of the world that surrounds them. But the world around us continues to unfold and at times can continue to be amazing. And we too can be amazed when we look up, when we look beyond our gadgets and the distractions of our lives. It's at that time that we can see the wonder of the moment that unfolds before us. This is the world in which Jesus found himself. It was a world created by our God. And it's a world that can indeed be amazing when we look and see what is happening around us. The iPad, the iPod, phone or laptop, and even the Rubik's Cube will still be there later on. And we can continue to be distracted by all that they will show us. But for the moment, for the now, in the midst of our lives, it's an important opportunity for us, like Jesus, to stop, to look, and to see. And in that moment, we too uncover the amazing world in which we live.